Hi there. Contractors typically do the work and then bill the owner for the expenses or the price or the value of the work they did. We'll cover in this video the process for doing that and also the way that contractors set up their schedule of values that can be used as the basis for payment applications and the process of submitting and approving these payment of applications. Application for payments, sorry. So schedule of values is used in unit price contract, but also in lump sum. So lump sums are mainly you're committing to a single number, a total sum of the project, but it's a good practice to provide schedule of values so it will be the basis for contractors to submit their application for payments. Or the ask money, not now against a big huge number, but by breaking this big lump sum number into line items or schedule of values, and then you can track the progress of achieving each one of these values, and you can bill or ask to be paid along the progress of achieving each one of the items in the schedule of values. So the schedule of values is submitted at the beginning of the project for the architect approval. If it's not even submitted as part of the kind of the bid, but still in hard bids you are selected based on the lump sum, not how it's broken over the schedule of values. So that's here, this requirement here is mentioned in the EIA 8201, the general conditions that we covered before. The value or the price of each one of these schedule of values items, kind of you can look at it as it includes two components. First, this value includes the cost of the work, which only the contractor knows in hard bid or design bid build projects. They have their own estimators. They have the ability to predict that in some way. So that's the cost that's being estimated, and also in addition to the cost to reach the value, the contractor will load also on top of that the part of the markup, the bid markup that can be assigned to this value or item, and the markup includes the overhead of the contractor, the contingency amount that they expect for depending on the risk of the project, and their own profit. So the item cost is based on basically estimating, but how you distribute the bid markup, there are different approaches. So we'll cover here two main ways. The first one is the even distribution of markup. From its name, even here, you're splitting the markup, total markup, which you calculate as a total value at the beginning. Because you kind of, it's based on in some way the total cost that you have. So you want to reach a specific profit, 4%, 5%. And then on top of that, if you see it risky, so you add 1%. And then the overhead is calculated in a separate estimate process to estimate your office overhead and site overhead. So we're not going into details of how you come up with the markup value, but it's a value that you calculate separately than the direct cost that you have for each one of these items. The question here, how to distribute this markup over the different bid items. So you end up with, at the end of the project, you will get your cost and the markup for the whole thing. So even here is not, you're not distributing this over 5 items equally, but even here means you're splitting this amount over the items while considering the contribution of this item to the total cost or the weight of the item. So even here means for every dollar of direct cost, you're evenly distributing the markup. So you're calculating the percentage of every one of the items to total relative to the total cost. So for example, the first item mobilization is 5.15%, but the biggest item in this bid is the concrete work, which is around 33.5%. Use these percentage now to distribute this 106K 500 markup over the item, so the largest item, the largest cost will get the largest portion of the markup, which is kind of fair, right? So the markup is basically the indirect effort and commitment you have to the direct work you do. So the more direct work you do toward finishing the project, it's fair to load indirect or relate comparative weight of that from your indirect effort into that activity. So you distribute the markup, and at the end you make sure, of course, that everything adds up to the total contractor markup, and then you add both the cost and the distributed share of the markup for every item. You end up now with the schedule of values. This is the schedule of values. And then you add up everything. This is now 634,800 is the total price of the contract. The second way of doing that is what's called the front loading of markup. So you're not evenly distributing the markup, you're loading the markup on the early items of the project that will be done earlier in the project. So you get your markup or your profit and contingency and overhead earlier, so that helps in many things. First, it helps with your cash flow, so you don't have to pay a lot of interest for the money that you use to build stuff, so that improves your cash flow. And it makes you more comfortable, more relaxed. You got your markup ahead early in the schedule. Now, is this ethical? Again, you're committed to finish the project. It's just a matter of little tweak. It's not a lot of money. You're not front loading the whole cost. You're just front loading your markup. So as long as you don't do it aggressively, a lot of people see it fine or part of the business. But you have to be careful because some contract conditions prohibit such front loading even for markup. So you just need to be careful doing that. And if owners and architects are really sensitive about front loading of markup, then they will need to pay a little attention to the numbers of the schedule of values. But it's a little harder to detect front loading of markup versus front loading of the total cost. So now we use this percentage, which is arbitrary. It depends on the bid manager or whoever is preparing the bid for the contractor, how much they want to front load the markup. This percentage should add up, of course, to 100%. So you distribute this 106,500 over these three items with this distribution. You get up the total markup is still the same. And then you can see here the total price is still the same. So you're not changing the price or the value of the bid, but you're just distributing the markup in a different way. Now, once you have this schedule of values approved and you submit it to the architect for approval and they approve it, now it becomes the basis for submitting your bills or invoices, or what we call in construction application for payments or payment apps. So you start here first by, and this flow chart here is kind of matching with what Articles 9.3 to 9.7 and AIA general conditions states. But initially here, you as a contractor, you collect this information here. You collect from your subs their costs and what they want to include in your payment application. If you are doing self-performed work, then you track the material on site, because like we'll see in the payment applications, you can actually claim or bill the owner for materials that you bought but you did not use yet in construction. And then you also track over the previous period or the previous month your activity, your self-performed work activities. So you track your salaries and time sheets of workers and all of that. You get all of that, and then you assemble it in a form application for payment. And then that takes a lot of effort from project engineers and project managers to collect this information. This is why I need 10 days before the stated date to submit the application. So let's say if you submit the application at the end of the month, then 20th of every month you start this process, contacting subs, checking with your superintendent what material we bought, and purchasing department also, and then checking with accountants, or if you're using a digital kind of project management system, you will have these numbers already available for you. So once you do that, you submit it to the architect, and the architect will review it and will say yes or no. So if it's not approved, which we'll see the real kind of the reasons here are kind of in articles, not Article 9.5. So one of the possible reasons I can tell you is defective work. So you claim that you finished the work, but the architect doesn't like the quality of the work, sees it as a defective. They will not approve the application payment if you claim the value of this work. So they might disapprove it, and then you have to go back and revise, which is bad news, because you don't want to delay your payment. And so it's always better to do the payment apps very carefully, so they got approved right away, and then you get your payment check right away. But once they approved, the architect approves the payment apps, they send it to the owners for approval and review and approval. Once the owner approves that also, kind of, which is mainly not from the technical aspect, from the work kind of aspect, but more from the accounting aspect and making sure that you're paying what is approved by the contract. So the owner accountants will approve that, and then the owner will make payments to the contractor. So it's a lengthy process. It takes, like we say here, the architects by the general conditions are committing to 7 days, but it might expand beyond that. After the 7 days, the owner will take also 7 to 10 days to review and approve. Now you transfer or wire the money, so at least you end up with, like, if you're really efficient, 3 weeks to get your money. So it's not, and if you got delayed or you have issues with the payment apps, that extends more the time you expect your money. So here, this is the information you need to collect. You have to collect the previous payment history, because the application for payment form that we'll use depends on that. It needs to consider how much money you already got paid, and then you need to collect the progress from your superintendent, so you know what's the progress of your self-performed work, all the stored material, and also the progress of your subs. Once you get all of that, then you'll be able to use the payment application forms. And we will use here AI8 702 and 703. Because we're based here on the design, bid, build project delivery. Now 702 is kind of the cover sheet, you can say, and 703 is the calculation sheet. They call it continuation sheet for 703. So you start with 703, and 703, you can see here, it's kind of a table, and it will be based on the schedule of values. So you start with 703, and then you copy values from 703 into the sum of these fields in 702, and at the end, in this square here, rectangle here, it will give you the number that you should ask the owner for in this payment app. I will leave you to learn more about these forms in detail by watching these nice tutorials here by a company called Levelset, which is a company kind of helping contractors to get their payment apps kind of faster. Very neat idea, but I will leave you to check these tutorials. I'll post the links with the video so you have access to these videos. In class, we'll go over this exercise. So this is the information that we will kind of assume if we're going to simulate that kind of a project. So we'll need to prepare 2 payment apps for the first and the second month. This is the progress information that you kind of collected from the site, and this is the schedule of values. Of course, it's a simple kind of example, not a real life project, but it's sufficient to practice how you prepare payment apps using G702, 703. But until we meet in class and do that, take care of yourself and those around you.